Today I'm going to show you an example of a diversity statement that I used to apply to UCLA, and it also awarded me a full scholarship from UCLA. So I'll show you that example, but first I want to talk about what a diversity statement is. A lot of times this is something that is optional in your grad school application or law school application, med school application, anything like that. In your application, they may ask for this as something to put into consideration for scholarships or things like that. It's a place for you to talk about any hardship, any barriers, any adversity, any things that you've overcome that may not have come up in another part of your application. So for example, you may have overcome something really difficult or hard or barriers, but that may not have been relevant to your SOP or your personal statement because maybe it didn't have something to do with specifically why you want to get into this grad program. So the diversity statement is space for you to do those things. And it is optional, so you aren't required to come up with some form of like hardship just to be able to write this. It's something you only want to write if it applies to you. And I also want to talk about what diversity means. This can mean a whole range of things. This can be your personal diversity in terms of your racial ethnic background, your socioeconomic status, where you grew up, your sexual orientation, any physical disabilities or educational disabilities or mental health struggles that you've gone through. This could also be having dealt with systems or institutions that may have been challenging, like foster care or having family that's incarcerated or things like that. All those things are related to your personal diversity, your personal background, but you also want to think about diversity in terms of your lens and your perspective and the approach that you bring into the work you do. So maybe, your personal background isn't that diverse, but maybe the work you do is really diverse, working in diverse communities, mixing diverse approaches in the kind of work you want to do. You can also talk about that in a diversity statement. You also can focus on the intersectionality of many different pieces of your life that make you diverse or bring in unique perspectives. For example, in my statement that I will show you, I talk about growing up a Latina in a low-income community. I talk about my experience being in a wheelchair after a car accident. I talk about why in my work I want to mix city planning and public health. So I bring in a lot of different elements to describe how I will bring a diverse perspective into the city planning program that I was applying to at UCLA. So you can think about those intersections in terms of how you describe your diversity. You also can think about, unique challenges that you faced or overcame, maybe unique situations where you were the only person in a certain environment that had a different lens, maybe had a different political orientation, or maybe you grew up in an environment where you were the only person from your kind of cultural background in that environment, in that school. So you can talk about the different intersections of things that make you unique, that bring that diverse perspective into your work and into the things you want to do. So this is the prompt for the UCLA diversity statement that I wrote. And they want to know how you will contribute to their understanding of barriers facing women, domestic minorities, students with disabilities, and other members of underrepresented groups in higher education careers. So, that's pretty broad here, but they also want you to display drive and motivation to persist and succeed in those careers in spite of barriers in higher education and other things. And then they also want you to discuss communication skills and cross-cultural abilities that maximize effective collaboration with a diverse cross-section of the academic community. So this is what I mean here by you might talk about, situations in which your lens or your perspective or your approach in your work is diverse and allows you to work with a diverse community. And so they're interested in people who are going to, add research that addresses issues such as race, gender, and diversity and inclusion, research that addresses health disparities, educational access, achievement, political engagement, all these kinds of things, civil rights, human rights, artistic and cultural expression and production. So, maybe you're an artist who mixes your art form with the type of research you want to do. You can think about that in terms of your unique lens. So I just want to start out with that, and I will move you down into the actual statement, which I'll read here. My background and skills give me the potential to make a substantial contribution to the diversity mission of UCLA. My direct experience of confronting the challenges of disadvantaged groups and research interests in health inequities give me a well-rounded perspective on the crucial importance of diversity. My experience of adversity started when I was very young. As the oldest of 5 children in my family, I always had to test the waters first. I was the one who had to figure things out on my own. My friends always had parents who could help them with homework, but my parents couldn't help me after elementary school. My peers had parents who helped them with FAFSA and college applications, while I had to figure it out for myself. We didn't have a functioning computer in my house during my school years, and I got my first laptop only several months into my freshman year of college. Seeing the financial troubles that my parents faced drove me to want to succeed despite the barriers to higher education I encountered as a Latina woman from a low-income family. Later, there were other challenges that shaped my path toward planning with a social purpose. At the age of 16, 2 weeks before the start of my senior year of high school, I was in a near-fatal car accident. The doctors told me I would be in a wheelchair for 6 months, out of school for a year, and that I would graduate with my class. During physical therapy, I tripled my exercise routines, amazing my doctors with my determination. I couldn't get tutors in the hospital because of my advanced classes, so I fought to get back to school, returning to my classes within 3 months. The entire school year, I never attended a full week of classes due to the constant doctor appointments, physical therapy, and periodic surgeries. Despite this, I graduated near the top of my class and attended UC Berkeley. I had to deal with the veil of invisibility and the social exclusion that go hand in hand with disabilities in our society. After years of living with the consequences of this injury, I can truly empathize with people with disabilities. My experience with physical impairment inspired me to apply the design principles I was learning to communities that sorely needed them. In the fall of 2008, I led a team of architecture students to Bolivia where we designed and built handicap accessibility for an orphanage for children with disabilities. In Bolivia, having a disability is very often associated with homelessness, joblessness, and destitution. It is a recipe for near total social exclusion. My senior thesis involved extensive research into design principles for handicapped access. This research gave me a deep awareness of the many obstacles to full participation in society that people with disabilities face. After graduating college and returning to my hometown of Wilmington, California, I became actively engaged in the fight for environmental justice. The rate of childhood asthma there is double the national average, and rates of obesity and cancer are much higher than surrounding communities. I reported on the links between these problems and deep health-related inequities, such as high concentration of toxic industries, as the Wilmington health correspondent for KQED. Founding the community blog, The Wilmington Wire, and using it as a platform for political activism gave me an appreciation for the importance of political engagement for everyone. I continued my research into participatory development during my Fulbright research in Rio de Janeiro. I worked with and studied SEDAPS, a public health nonprofit that coordinates hundreds of community leaders from the region's favelas. I gained valuable insights into community participatory development and how inclusion of a diverse cross-section of leaders and activists gave the organization its power. It was perceived as a fair representative of many groups' interests and successfully lobbied municipal and state governments. This work furthered my interest in research topics around disadvantaged groups and their access to resources. My background encapsulates an extremely diverse background, both in terms of the communities I have been a part of and the subjects I have studied and worked on. Throughout all of these experiences, a common theme has been my ability to bridge divides between people. This is not a simple task. It involves developing empathy between cultures with very different values. It has required me to learn languages both literally and figuratively. And most of all, it has been driven by my deep belief that it is only through collaborative approaches among diverse individuals that we will be able to tackle the problems presented by a rapidly urbanizing world. My work at UCLA will strengthen diversity and equal opportunity, not because I see these things as an end in themselves, but because I believe they are a necessary precursor to effective change in the field of urban planning. So as you can see in this statement, I move through various different experiences that I've had that give me a really unique lens in how I approach my work in urban planning in trying to bring together different voices. So I move from discussing with the personal adversity I have faced, but how that adversity has then shaped my worldview and how it shaped the work I do and influences the work I will continue to do at UCLA. You definitely don't have to go through your whole life history here or go through many different experiences. You can focus on just one experience, but I wanted to give you an example of my statement. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but what you want to do is just be true to highlighting the experiences you've had and the things that you care about and make that come through. You also want to make sure that that's coming through with authentic storytelling, with giving examples. So as you can see in this, I've given many examples of what I was thinking, what I was feeling, why I approached something a certain way. I'm not just telling them about my work, I'm giving them insights into what it looked like while I was doing those things. So take that all into consideration. And if you see my other videos with my statement of purpose and my personal statement, you can see how this is a nice attachment, and it really blends in well with what I say in my other essays, but it's not repeating what I've already said in my other essays. So take that into consideration too. This is a part of my Applying to Grad School series. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Also check out my office hours that happen every month where you can get feedback on your statements.